Hi, my name's Dan, I'm a guitar player and teacher, and this is the first lesson in my beginner guitar series. Throughout this course of lessons, we're going to go over all the fundamentals of guitar and get you playing along to songs as soon as possible. You can watch all the videos for free on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, and there will also be some extra resources available on my Patreon page, which I'll pop a link to in the description. Now, to get started on any instrument, you need to have the right equipment, so I'm quickly going to talk you through all the gear that I think every new guitar player should have. The first thing you're going to need, pretty obviously, is a guitar. It doesn't matter if it's an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar. Obviously, if you're going down the electric route, you'll need an amp and a cable to plug it in as well, but just go with whichever one is most appealing to you. More importantly is that the guitar is easily playable, so make sure, for example, that the strings aren't too high off the neck, because that's going to make it a real struggle for a beginner guitar player. Next, you're going to want to pick up a tuner, and I'd recommend getting one of these little headstock tuners. They just clip onto the end of your guitar with this clip here. They're super convenient and I think quite a bit more accurate than any of the tuning apps that you can get on your phone. You're also going to need some guitar picks. Dunlop is the biggest manufacturer of guitar picks, so that might be a good place to start, and it might be worth getting a variety pack so you can have a bit of a play around with the different sizes and see what works best for you. You're also going to want to get hold of a capo, which looks like this, and it's basically a little device which clips on the neck and allows you to play your chords in different places, and essentially that just means you can play a lot more songs while you're learning guitar, which makes it a lot more fun. And finally, pretty easy one, you're going to want to download a metronome app on your phone. This is the one that I use. It's called Metro Timer, but a lot of my students use a newer one by a company called Soundbrenner, so maybe give those ones a go. But any sort of free metronome will do, and that's just going to allow you to practice in time. Now, I don't want to bore you with loads of information about the equipment at this point. I know I've just kind of skimmed over a few things. There is more information available in my beginner booklet, which you can download on Patreon, but you're also going to kind of see how all the different bits of equipment are used as we learn more things on guitar. Starting with the tuner, because we're about to learn to tune. Now, you need to get your guitar in tune for it to sound good, and I think it's a good idea to tune every time you play. That way you're going to get a lot quicker at tuning, it's going to feel like less of a hassle, and you're never going to have to worry about your guitar being out of tune. Try and avoid becoming one of these guitar players who says things like, I tuned it last night, or I tuned it before I got in the car. Just tune it again, and then it's definitely in tune. So you need to know what notes to actually tune the strings to, and I'm going to give you them in order from the lowest in pitch to the highest in pitch. Now, this is a little bit confusing already because the string that's lowest in pitch is physically closest to the ceiling. It sounds like this. And the string that's highest in pitch is physically closest to the floor, which sounds like this. But obviously when you're playing an instrument, the sound of the notes that you're playing is a lot more important than where they're physically found on the instrument, so that's why the terminology is that way. So in order from lowest to highest, we have E, A, D, G, B, and E. So the first thing that you'll notice is that the outer two strings are both E strings, which we refer to as the low E, being physically closest to the ceiling, and the high E found physically closest to the floor. You can use mnemonic devices to learn the order of the strings. A couple of good examples are elephants and donkeys grow big ears, or Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. You don't have to use these, but do try and learn the names of the strings as soon as possible because it will make your guitar journey a lot easier. Now, I just want to pre-warn you about a couple of things that you're going to come across while tuning your guitar. There's going to be more information on this in the Patreon booklet, and I am going to do a full theory lesson at some point, but this is just the stuff you need to know to get in tune. First of all is the fact that the musical alphabet only goes between A and G, and then it repeats again from A. So for example, if you're trying to tune to an A note and your tuner is telling you that you're on G, you actually need to tune up and not down. The second thing is that there are notes in between the letters called sharps or flats. You might have heard of these already. If you look at a piano, they would be the black keys, and basically the tuner is going to tell you if you're on a sharp or a flat, but for now you don't want to be tuning to any of them notes. So here we are in a close-up for the tuning. You can see my clip-on tuner on the end of the headstock there, and I've just detuned a few of the strings so you can see how to get back in tune. Now we're going to start with the lowest string, which if you remember was an E note, so I'm going to pick the string to see where we're currently at. You can see that my tuner is showing a D note, so we need to tune up in pitch because E is higher in the alphabet than D. So I'm going to turn this peg, you can see which strings attach to which pegs, and I'm going to tighten the string so that the pitch goes up. Now you can see we've moved on to another note, which is also a D, but it's got a dot at the end. The dot on my tuner signifies the sharp that I warned you about. Remember, we don't want to be tuning to sharps and flats at this point, so I need to keep tuning. Your tuner might actually show a sharp or a flat sign, but that's something that you'll get used to. Now as I get closer to the E, I want to start doing just small turns because I don't want to shoot past the note. This is kind of like a little bit of fine tuning. And there we are, when it's settled on green, I'm now in tune with my low E string. Next, we're going to tune the A string, and I've purposefully detuned this one so you can see how the cycle of the notes works. So if I pick the string, you can see that it's showing a G note, but remember the cycle repeats again from G. So if I tune up, first I'll get my G sharp, so you can see that the dots appeared. Then if I go up again, that's where I get my A. So again, small turns as you approach the note. And there we go, A string in tune as well. The next string we're going to tune is the D string, because remember, elephants and donkeys. So if I give that a pick, this time it's showing E, so the string's actually tuned too high. So I'm going to tune the string down. You should be able to hear the pitch descending as well. There you can see the D sharp because it's got the dot, so I need to keep going. Now a really good idea when you're having to tune down is to actually tune down below the note that you're aiming for, like this, and then tune back up. I'm sure there's some science behind this that someone will be able to explain to you, but I just know that it's a lot better for tuning stability to do it that way. Now to round off this tuning section, I'm just going to play each note so you have a reference pitch when you're tuning, so you can use your ear as well as your tuner to make sure that your guitar is perfectly in tune. So here we go, here is the low E string. Here is the A string. D string, G, B, and high E. Now that you're all tuned up, it's time to learn some chords. But if you're new to music, you might be wondering, what is a chord? Well, a chord is just a group of notes that work well together or harmonise to create a certain effect. And the two most common types of chords are major chords and minor chords. Major chords give you a happy sound, minor chords give you a sad sound, and so you can hear an example. Here is a major chord. And here is the equivalent minor chord. So hopefully you can hear the difference between the happiness and the sadness there. In this lesson, we're going to learn some simplified chords, which I call starter chords, and they basically just give you something that you can play around with on day one. And then in the next lesson, we're going to learn some full-size chords that you'll use for the rest of your guitar playing life. But just so you don't get confused, I'm going to explain the finger numbering system. So this is in the fretting hand, which for me is my left hand. Now we're not going to be playing any notes with the thumb today, but if you ever do, it'll just be referred to as the thumb. Your index finger is first finger, middle finger is second finger, ring finger is third finger, and little finger is fourth finger. So let's get stuck in and have a look at these chords. The first chord that we're going to learn is a G major chord. Now when it comes to chord names, this might just be referred to as G because the major is often presumed, whereas when it's a minor, you have to specify. But this is a G major. And all we're going to do is take the third finger and we're going to pop it on the third fret of the high E string. Now let's just talk about fret placement for a second, because if I play at the back of the fret here, you can hear I'm not getting a very good note, whereas if I play towards the front of the fret, towards the body of the guitar, and apply the same pressure, I get a much stronger note. So try and avoid playing notes at the back of the fret like this. Try and at least play in the middle or towards the front of the fret. Also be careful not to play on top of the metal fret. That doesn't sound good either, it's just behind. And for this chord, you only want to play the top four strings, so D, G, B, and high E strings, which together should sound like this. The next chord is going to be an E minor chord, so this is going to be one of them sadder sounding chords, and for this one all we're going to do is take our second finger and place it on the second fret of the D string. So the full chord sounds like this. And the thing that you want to be wary of in this chord is the second finger lying down too flat and actually touching the G string and muting it. So it's killing that note on the G string, but you want to make sure you get the angle right so that you can hear both the D string, which it's fretting, and the G string physically below it as well. So it might be worth checking all the strings by just picking them individually. So you can make sure that you're hearing all the notes that you want to hear in your chord. The next chord is going to be a starter version of a C major chord, and unlike the previous chords, this time we only need the top 3 strings. And first finger is just going to pop on the first fret of the B string like that. And similar to the E minor, you've got to be careful that the finger isn't lying down too flat and muting the top string. So if I play the top string like this, you can hear the notes clipped and it's not ringing through properly, whereas if I get the angle right, I can hear that top string ringing out nice and clearly. So as I said, it's just the top 3 strings for this one. Pick them individually to check them and then play them together. And that's a nice little starter C chord. And the final chord for today is going to be a D chord. This is going back to just using the top 4 strings. So we're going to start with the open D string. First finger is going to play the second fret of the G string. Third finger is going to play the third fret of the B string. And then the high E, you can either lie the fingers down to mute it, or you can leave it open. For now, for when you're just getting started, it doesn't really matter. I just want to make sure you can get these 2 fingers working together to fret the D chord. So if you play all 4 strings with the top note ringing out, it should sound like that. And the technical name for that chord is a D sus2. You don't really need to know that right now, but it might come in handy later on. Or if you lie the fingers down, you'll get the D, G and B strings, and then the top string will be muted. As I say, it doesn't really matter for now. I just want you to get the main body of this D chord. Second finger, it might rest kind of up here in a sort of sweary kind of way, or it might be tucked in down here. Again, doesn't matter. Just make sure that you're getting the main body of your chord nice and clear. And the final thing to work on at the end of this first lesson is moving between the chords. Now you should only move on to this once you're happy with your ability to play each chord and you can get each string ringing out consistently. But once you're at that point, start moving between them. So here's your G chord. Try and jump straight to that E minor. Then to the C. Then the D. And cycle round again. Maybe even try doing 4 strums on each chord. Obviously don't expect it to sound that smooth straight away. It'll take a little bit of work to build up the muscle memory to move straight from one chord to another. But you can already hear that it's starting to sound a little bit like a song, which is pretty cool if you've only played guitar for 10 minutes at this point. So that was quite a lot of information packed into just one short video, but hopefully it helps get you started on guitar. Now all the lessons are going to be nice and organised on my channel page, so feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along. Remember, there's also the extra resources on Patreon, so you'll be able to download the chord diagrams and the beginner booklet, which I think has quite a lot of useful information in there for a beginner. I also want to say a quick well done for getting through your first lesson, because there's a lot of new stuff to get to grips with here, but hopefully you're enjoying learning guitar and want to stick with it, and if so, I'll see you in the next lesson where we learn your first full-size guitar chords.